It's an interesting balance between establishing yourself as an authority and not being authoritarian, so that they know that you're approachable enough that if they have a question or if they don't want to say something in front of their peers, they want to talk to you afterwards, that you're approachable enough for them to do that.
Welcome to Classical Etc. You're in the studio with Shane Saxon.
Welcome to another episode of Classical Etc. Where today we're going to talk about going back to school. Have you all heard about the experience that JCPS has had? That is the Louisville Public Schools.
No, I saw that they were out of school today and tomorrow because did they not get kids home last night?
Some kids didn't get to school until after school was over.
No way.
That's what I heard.
They weren't on the bus
So they
that
just
long.
canceled school today to try to figure out. There's a bus driver shortage, and this is always a problem in Louisville, but it was really bad. And so they're trying to sort that out.
Okay, so epic fail first day. We'll try again next week.
That's right.
Well, it's not like it was ever a success for any other reason anyway.
Right. I did see a headline that some kids didn't get to home until 9 p.m.
Right.
Oh,
That's what I heard.
I remember another year that happened. That was awful. I mean, if my child had been on a school bus until 9 o'clock at night, I would have been at the superintendent's house. And I know he's not immediately responsible, but it's like the first week of school here when we upstairs.
There are always bumps in the road.
When we look out on Shelbyville Road, and one of the main roads in Louisville, one of the main thoroughfares, and our carpool is backed up on the Shelbyville Road for as far as you can see out our window.
Mr. Wheatley said they're going to be finishing the 7th and 8th grade classrooms during morning assembly.
That's right.
And before the students walk up there.
And there is no air conditioning at this point.
Oh, they're working on it.
It's a hot mess down there.
They're working on it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what I want to talk about is starting off your school year well. But before we get there.
Well, you know what? I think we always start it well, and we can talk about this, but it's just those little logistical things that get in the way, like air conditioning and the floors. We don't actually have a floor in the cafeteria at this moment. But
and those things are great for stories. They're great for stories.
But it's a little nerve-wracking right now to look around and think, we have a week.
Martin, before we tell the stories, I want to ask you, what have you been reading recently?
I've gone back, and this is because at Memorial College we have our Dust Jacket podcast, which we're about to do another one. It's basically we take a book, talk about it, Professor Scheffler and I, and we are doing a book that I never really finished, and I'm glad I have an excuse to finish it now. Jacques Barzun's From Dawn to Decadence, A History of the Last 500 Years. And when you're reading it, you realize that you're in the hands of this great humanities scholar. I mean, one of the greatest who ever lived. This guy was so widely learned, and he was such a great writer. And he knew history, he knew literature, he knew teaching and education. I use a couple of his books in my classical pedagogy class at the college. And so my students love him because he's so clear. He's just a master of clear. And he wrote books on clear writing. So I'm going through the Reformation right now, and he's just got this. It's not exhaustive. He's not getting down into all the nitty gritty details, but he'll pick out anecdotes and stories throughout this thing, and it's just every sentence is interesting. And
it's very readable, accessible.
It's very readable. It's not.
I've got it, but I haven't read it. I just got it, I think, because there was such a shortage of them that whenever I found it, it was like gold to me.
Well, what Tanya is referring to is a number of years ago there was an independent bookseller here in town, and they had a great bargain books thing out front, and a lot of it was the cutout. So when publishers are coming in with their paperbacks, they just sell the hardbacks real cheap to bookstores, and they sell them for real cheap. So they had a whole several stacks of From Dawn to Decadence hardbacks, really nice hardbacks there. So I was at the time doing conventions, and I was doing our booth, and I would have other books there. So I bought them for the booth, and then they had a book club that they wanted to read it and they couldn't find any
Because
copies.
you highly recommended it.
Because I recommended it, but they couldn't
And
find
then
them
there
because
was
I bought
not
them.
one in Louisville,
Yeah.
not a book in Louisville. We could not even find it. So then one day when I did find it, years later, I thought, oh, here's this book. I need to get it because it's so hard to find. And they're all in Martin's house.
They're still in a box.
This is what we call in marketing the scarcity complex.
That's exactly
Yes.
right. You didn't mention the other book you're reading.
What other book am I reading?
The one that
We just discussed for 15 minutes.
Oh, well, I know. Well, I've discussed that 15 times here, I think, because I've been reading it. I've been trying to read it.
But you're
for
still
about-
reading it.
Yeah.
The Three Musketeers.
The Three Musketeers.
Yeah.
Yes, The Three Musketeers.
And I started it because they were reading it, and I thought I didn't want to be left off the bandwagon. So now you need to
I will not
reread
read
it.
it. Sorry.
After
You
all the
need to
bad
read it.
reviews.
Yeah, I don't know yet. I'm
Yeah.
only 60 pages in.
You guys
or
haven't
so.
exactly given glowing reviews either.
I know, not yet.
You
But
know,
Paul-
but
Paul
we had
likes
this
it.
conversation, I think, on the podcast where I said it doesn't match up nearly to the Count of Monte Cristo. But like, if you want a good adventure story, it's good. Well, I went back and I listened to the whole thing, and I realized at the end there's
Recently?
yeah, within
He
the past
just did.
month,
That's why I
past
picked
couple
it
weeks.
up because he changed his tune. I didn't.
Well, hold on.
You-
I modified my tune. It's the same tune, but it's modified. Okay.
It's the same tune, but it's got a different melody.
No. Same melody, just slightly different. You know, like it's again still not nearly as good as Count of Monte Cristo, but it does deal with some great ideas. You gotta get to the end though, that I think are worth discussing.
Okay. So after we read The Count of Monte Cristo, I loved it so much. I said, I've got The Three Musketeers. I think I'll read that. This is years ago. And Paul said, it's not near as good. I think you said, don't waste your time.
I might have.
Yes. And so I just left it on my shelf and I didn't read it. And then all of a sudden he's reading it and he's like, I really like this book. And I said, no, wait a minute. You talked me out of reading it. And maybe after The Count of Monte Cristo, I really might have just, because even the first 50 pages in, I'm thinking, this is no Monte Cristo. It is not jumping in like that book jumped in.
Yeah.
So the thing about Dumas that I read in the introduction to the book that I'm actually reading, and the introduction was written by Pavir, the translator, is that somebody else wrote with him, but the publisher wouldn't give that person credit for it because he was an unknown. And so Dumas didn't really write this book or Monte Cristo by himself.
Oh, interesting.
There's this whole story in there that I didn't know, and this
It's probably more interesting than the book itself.
Oh, come on, Martin.
Okay, you've got to get through it, and then we'll have a final, because that does happen where you just think this isn't worth reading, but then by the end,
Yeah,
Right.
and I have a list of books on my computer that I want to have read,
before you die
before I die.
or get Alzheimer's and can't remember that you've read how to read.
Yeah, and this one would have been better done later after I'd gotten the Alzheimer's. But there are books on there that you have to trudge through, but they're so influential. I remember Saturday morning cartoons in the 60s and 70s on the Three Musketeers.
Oh,
It
yes.
was just hugely popular.
Yes.
And I don't know. And I also think it's a book that was written in a time when people had a lot more time.
And wouldn't it be nice to know if it influenced your Sabatini that you love so much?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know when each was writing. I assume Dumas was before.
Oh, Dumas
17
was
is way after.
Okay. Yeah, Subtle's in the 30s.
Dumas was way early,
Yeah.
Okay.
like
Yeah.
late 1600s.
No,
17?
no, because the Count of Monte Cristo happens after Napoleon.
Oh, no. It's
Yeah,
just that
1800s.
this book
Yeah.
is
This
set.
book is set a couple hundred
Yeah.
years earlier.
Well, I'm sure he probably read it then, but there was a lot of adventure books written.
Yeah, there were
back then.
a lot of adventure books. Before we move on, I was going to say I started reading after the Three Musketeers. I started reading Cloud Cuckoo Land.
Mhm.
I've heard of this.
Door.
I've heard of that
Josie
too.
Stamps recommended it to me.
Mm.
Well, hold on. I don't think she recommended it. I think she said, I need somebody to read it and discuss it because I don't really know what to think about it.
Mm.
But in some ways, I feel like I'm not necessarily educated enough to understand it.
Oh, wow.
In the sense that there are clear references going on to Aristophanes in the Greek plays that I do not know well enough, I think, to understand
you should
what he's
ask
going
John
through.
to read it.
He should read it. But then you got these weird contrasts between like something that's clearly hearkening back to that, and then sort of like a utterly modern style in certain segments of the book. So he's constantly flipping back and forth between like, I think, a couple of different centuries. And then, and when he's writing in today, it's super modern. And when he's writing the older, I got the feeling at one point that I was like reading Laurus, or one of those, a Russian novel that's was really intentionally trying to get you into medieval Russia. And then I have this ultra modern sort of American. It's really interesting, but
it was well reviewed.
Cloud Cuckoo Land.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know. The jury's out for me.
Well, and there's another book he wrote that was pretty popular.
All the Light You Cannot See.
All the Light You Cannot See.
Oh, wait.
That's that.
That was Anthony Dorr.
Mm-hmm.
That
Oh,
is
it's Anthony
He
Dorr.
wrote
Yeah.
Cloud Cuckoo Land. Yeah.
Oh, so it's fiction?
It's fiction.
Yes.
Oh.
Yes.
Yeah.
Huh. Okay, I really liked All the Light You Cannot See.
Well, a lot of people did. I haven't read either, but yeah.
I liked it.
Yeah, it was good. And so
but this one is more difficult.
I feel like
you don't know the illusions.
I don't necessarily know the illusions, and I can't really tell where it's going. I feel like All the Light You Cannot See, you could see that better.
Oh yeah, I felt like it wasn't a complicated story.
Thank you.
Totally
and maybe I would be doing better in this book if I were sitting down and reading it rather than listening to it. I think that's one of those.
There are
books
some books that are
that you have to read.
That would be a
You have
whole
to look
great
at the
topic
words.
for
Right.
is these books that
modes
some
of
are
reading.
better read,
Yes.
some are better
Some you
listened
just
to,
need to
some
read.
are, yeah.
You just need to go through the words more slowly at your pace. And there are some places where you need to reread a paragraph, and you can't with an audiobook. It just keeps going.
That's right. No, you get frustrated if
Yes.
you're listening to it and you need to do that.
Would you like to tell us what you're reading?
My reading habits of late have been a story of polar opposites. So there's this one author, and I'm almost hesitant to say his name, and I'm not going to say the name of the book, he was recommended to me. Well, you see his name a lot, and I'm going to say it. Maybe we can take it out if
I move that we require him to say what.
Well, it's Larry McMurtry. Larry McMurtry.
Yes,
absolutely.
So
yes.
recommended as a great Southern author. Pick up one of his books.
Okay.
And I'm
Which
like
one?
2/3 of the way through. I don't think I could say.
Which book?
I'm not sure if I should say.
Is it Lonesome Dove? Is it
Not Lonesome Dove?
Is it
Process of
the last?
Elimination? Yeah, the last
one
picture
that he-
show.
Oh, The Last Picture Show. I've read that.
I read that a couple years ago.
That's not a great
So juvenile.
start.
So juvenile.
And
I feel like his characterization is good. I obviously the sense of place is good, but his fixation with just like juvenile aspects of coming of age, I find
you should read Lonesome Dove.
not very good.
Well, okay. I think The Last Picture Show shows up his Larry McMurtry's weakness, right? Because a lot of people have
Could've told
seen
me that before I started.
a lot of people have seen the menu. No, I mean,
You didn't want to share who you were reading, so we couldn't tell you.
McMurtry is an important writer. He was in Wendell Berry's class at
Stanford, under Wallace Stegner.
Under Wallace Stegner
He
and Ernest
and
Gaines.
Ernest Gaines
was in
and
that
Ken
class.
Kesey.
Ken Kesey. So he's an important author. But I don't remember who I told this, but we were talking about Larry McMurtry and the Lonesome Dove series of books. I've read one or two of those, and I read The Last Picture Show, had the same reaction you did. But the problem with Larry McMurtry is his world is not a moral world. There is no morality behind it. And it comes out in what happens in the books, which is why they're we're not recommending that you read McMurtry because he's a good storyteller, but when I'm reading a book, is why I like a Tolstoy or something like that, because that is a moral world. There are rules that you cannot violate.
And the characters
do, there's
may
consequences.
violate them.
And they may violate them.
But the rules are there.
Right. But here there's no rules.
I feel like that about Great Gatsby. There are no rules.
Yeah, I think a lot of like art is really the artist kind of showing what they enjoy. And not that sometimes, objectionable material comes in, because it's another way to say what you're saying is that it is a part of the greater good of the story. That is, without darkness, there is no light. But occasionally you read a book where it's like, this guy just has fascinations that I don't have and that are problematic to me. And that fixation, I think, can be really problematic in a lot of modern art. And so I guess I probably started at the worst possible place with McMurtry, but I had heard him compared to other great Southern authors, which sounds like you guys agree that he is a great Southern author. So I guess I'll just find a different book.
I mean, I haven't chosen to read everything he's written. He's not my favorite, but I do think, he was part of that class that I'm just amazed that, I think Wallace Stegner is worth reading.
Absolutely.
Who taught them. Mm-hmm. But just to have that many people in one writing class, and they stuck together all those years. Wendell was writing to Ernie Gaines until he died. He was writing to McMurtry until he died. Ken Kesey. All of those guys who managed to be published and have professional careers writing I think Stegner's
it has to be
genius.
Yeah.
Like, how did he do that?
That's not an accident.
Right.
So that's the one thing that I picked that up on an airplane because I was just looking for something on the plane to read. The other book I've been reading, I met this guy named Derek on the road, and he sells like religious art to schools. And we were chatting, having great conversations, and he hands me this. He walks by me and hands me his card. On the back of it, it's written "Ascetical Theology, Adolphe Tanqueray." He's like, "You need to read this book based on our conversations." I'm like, "Oh, okay." So I got it. I started reading it, and it's really interesting.
Is it?
Yeah, but I like that kind of. It's nonfiction.
Oh, say that slowly again.
Ascetical Theology
by
Adolphe Tanqueray.
Tanqueray.
Yeah,
I have not heard of that one.
Yeah.
Is that a recent book?
1930s, I think.
Depends on, in the classical world, yes.
This is ringing bells but I don't know what bells are ringing. I'm gonna have to go look that up afterwards.
Yeah, it's interesting. But enough about that. The school year is starting, and students will be coming to this campus pretty soon. Tanya, when you think about the start of school, what were the things that made you excited for your first day as a teacher? You were both a homeschool mom teacher and a teacher in the classroom. What were the things that made you excited? What were the things that made you apprehensive about that first day?
Well, the first year, everything made me apprehensive and nothing made me excited until the end of the first day when I thought, this is the most amazing thing I've ever done. But after that, it was just... For teachers tend to be very organized people, and they love office supplies. So, just even getting your classroom together at home and in school was exciting to me. And then
I don't remember that part of it.
I don't either. I'm sitting here going, definitely not one of my top things.
I think, maybe it's just lower school
It could be lower school teachers.
I don't know, but it's just really an exciting thing to get it all ready. And to get all those supplies that you need and get your classroom ready. It's a lot of work too, and it's stressful if you can't get into your classroom. Mm-hmm. But, and even at home to go through last year's books, because generally I would just throw last year's books in a bin and just be sick of it and not look at them again. And then all of a sudden it's time to start. So you have to get that organized in order to know what you need. So there's all of that is exciting and intimidating. Mm-hmm. And stressful, but once the students come into the classroom and you get started with them and start getting to know them, I always started with a little talk to them. Even though I was teaching 5th and 6th grade, they were trained basically, unless I had new students, which I always had some, but I would talk to them about how we were going to be a community, because at our school, the teacher teaches every single subject. So you literally have this little class of students that's yours all year long. And so it's a magical time, and they're excited. They're a little intimidated. Especially I had a reputation for being a difficult teacher. So I don't know that they were all excited about being in my class at the beginning.
Now, Paul, since you feel neither joy nor apprehension ever, what was your first days of school like?
Are you a stoic?
Over here smiling, so I suppose I feel something.
Well, you're getting ready to have a first day of school.
What was the question, Shane?
What's intimidating about it, and what are you excited about when you walk into those students?
Okay.
In a week.
This year, this is the second year I'll be teaching juniors, right? Second time in my life I'm teaching juniors. And there's something about the upper high school where you're like, you know that they're old enough and smart enough to have their own opinions. And so as much as I don't care about what other people think about me, there is a little nagging part of me in the back, like, okay, these kids are going to go home and talk about me, right? Like, I don't care what the fourth grader says or the seventh grader says when I get home, but the junior, there's a little bit more weight there.
You're talking about establishing your superiority.
Well, and so that's so what I have done and what I intend to do is, just start off with, and I did this with seventh graders too. I feel like everybody's seventh grade and up needs it, is you're adults here. I'm not treating you. I'm not hand-holding you. I am not, especially with juniors, like I'm going to tell you what the best way is to be successful. It's up to you whether you do it or not. Happy to fail you.
It's true at that point.
And that's establishing my superiority right there.
There you go.
Happy to fail you anytime I can. But it's an interesting balance between establishing yourself as an authority and not being authoritarian.
Right.
So that they know that you're approachable enough that if they have a question or if they don't want to say something in front of their peers, they want to talk to you afterwards, that you're approachable enough for them to do that.
Right.
How have you tried to, do you have strategies for navigating that tension of approachability and superiority?
Cheryl always said, don't smile till Christmas.
I don't remember that one.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, she did. She did used to say that.
Well, it was tongue in cheek. She didn't really mean not to smile until Christmas.
Yeah.
But she did mean gravitas.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to start out with gravitas, because if you don't, then you can loosen up. But if you don't start with that serious, this is your job, you're here to do a job, I'm going to do my job, then once you lose it, it's very hard to get that respect that you need.
Yeah. I just being human. I mean, I don't really know, there's no gimmick on that. Like, you have to be an authentic human being that shows you care about them, but also establishes you as the authority, right? You're the leader.
No. Now, Martin, you have the word ritual written on your piece of paper, underlined, and that seems very deep to me. Explain that.
Well, glad you asked. I think, and this is one of the things I think that Highlands Latin School does so well is ritual. It's a marker. We begin our school year with a ritual. We have programs at important points in the Christian year, Christmas and some other times, and at the end of school. So we have a beginning of school ceremony, we have an end of school ceremony, and it's like everyone has to sit and think about this is very, very, very intentionally that this is the beginning of something important. And if it's ritualized, it underscores the importance of it. That this thing that we're marking is so important that we're going to take some time out of that process to commemorate the fact that we are doing this. And I think that is something modern people don't do very well. And I think it's something we need to retain and practice, because kids need to know that what they're doing in school is important, and they need to know that you think it's important. Because if they don't get that, then that's when misbehavior starts. That's when, things start, the wheels start falling off. If they know that this is a serious enterprise and they know that you think it's a serious enterprise, then they'll consider it that.
When the school first started, and it was really not much of a school, but Cheryl had in her mind an idea about what she wanted it to look like, even though it was 25, 30 kids. It was still to her really important to set that up. And when I tell the history of all of this, I always talk about the fact that I know that they were up until 3 o'clock in the morning printing and binding books because we were never ready for the first day of school. And so for the teachers to have what they needed in the classrooms, it was just very last minute. As y'all have worked here a long time, it's just the way we roll many times. And so I knew that she had been up all night, but still, as soon as the students were seated with their parents in a sanctuary at that point, and she always had a bagpiper and a drummer, which we still have, but that started way back at the beginning when there weren't that many students. And they would march in and she would march in and she would give her charge, her opening exhortation and her charge to the students, to the teachers, to the parents, that this was an important thing for all three of these groups. And then each teacher would be called and their class dismissed to go to class with them. And it really did set the pace for the first day of school. And I knew she'd been up all night the night before, but it was still, she was up there doing that charge, making sure that the opening day of school did have the importance that she felt like it deserved. And I think homeschoolers do a good job of doing that too. It's not just, I've seen, on my forum years and just talking to them, they'll have rituals that they have established, like going out to breakfast the first day of school, or having a particular recipe of chocolate chip cookies that they only make for the first day of school. So that ritual is important even in the home to establish this is the beginning of your school year.
It has to be formalized
right.
in some way, because formality is one of the things that indicates importance. Informality basically is a signal that it's not that important, and
right.
we don't get that a lot of times, right? There was a we do Christmas programs, and we do these every year. That's the other thing. It may have seemed a little strange to people at first, but now it's like, oh, of course you do that, right?
Right.
And it was Christmas, or maybe it was a Good Friday. We have a Good Friday program, and the kids had done had done this really beautiful musical program. And it was at what's now our second campus, Crescent Hill, and it's a big, beautiful Baptist church and facility, and we use that to do the program. And so I was walking out to get something from my car. I may have told this story on the air before, but there was I walked out of the front of the church, and I was going to my car, and I heard a voice behind me, Mr. Cothran, and I turned around, and it wasn't anybody I knew, but he said, "I'm so and so. My son goes to the school." He said that program was incredible. Now I know why I send my son here. And it really struck me that I don't think we naturally think of that as being something important, but somebody who probably wasn't even inclined towards any kind of formality,
right.
in a religious service even said that told me what your school is about. That ritual that you did in that case.
Yes.
So,
and sometimes it's something people don't appreciate. Right. And I know somebody that was in my class, and the parents complained about the Christmas cantata. They were like, well, it was just all so serious, and
Well, see,
it was, there were songs in Latin, and it just, just wasn't really the good time that we were expecting it to be. And I thought, you're not going to make it past this year. And they did. They left because it wasn't what they were looking for. They weren't looking for that kind of ritual and formality in their child's education.
I think it is important too to point out like how much effort, there's a lot of effort and work that goes into these, those ritual things, right? Like I'm just thinking about opening school ceremony and the amount of trying to decide, is this inside? Is it outside? Is it going to be sunny? Is it going to rain? I've come in onto campus mornings where we're doing opening school, and we've got every adult on campus moving chairs from the gym to the outside because all of a sudden it was sunny and we wanted to be outside, and
moving the sound
systems and blocking off driveways, and
But once it starts,
that is because it's that important, right? It's worth putting all of that energy and manpower and effort and worry and all that, because it's a clear delineation that we're going from summer where things are loose and to now we're starting the school year.
So Paul, at the online academy, one could say this is maybe a weakness of doing online school is that there isn't the formality, the ritual, but I know you and Mitchell have talked about this. What are ways that you're trying to bring kind of formality and ritual to a digital space that kind of it's not neutral. It's maybe on the negative side in terms of actually like creating healthy human rhythms.
Yeah, I had an interesting conversation with a teacher this year that doesn't teach the online academy, just a teacher I ended up having a conversation with, and he was asking about the online academy. And as we talked, I was like, it's fascinating. If you think about it, the digital space by its very nature disembodies, and these sorts of things, these rituals we're talking about, it's an embodiment of something. And so we don't have any sort of, okay, it's Monday morning of the first day of school and we can all log on and do this, because honestly, our system would probably crash if we try to get all our students in on one room at one time. But that's something we talk a lot about with our teachers as far as establishing their routines early on, making sure that even when the students come into the classroom, into that digital space, that, as Tanya's talking about getting all your office supplies and stuff ready, like, is your presentation ready? Is your chat box clear? Are you moving pods around, or are those set when those students walk in, just to even have that sort of
time on task, even on day one, which is something we do differently from colleges, which is, it literally is, let's take 10 minutes and look at the syllabus. Goodbye. Yeah, but you are going to have your students for 70 minutes.
But we do our open houses. So every class has an open house in the 2 or 3 weeks before we start school, which is just 20 minutes or so. But that's where the teacher goes through the syllabus, sets the expectations, lets the students know what's coming. So that way, when we start on day one, it is a class. It's school.
Yeah, and it's clearly going to be organized and structured. And the other thing I would say is, I know that when I taught, I would always try to, particularly in something, well, it really doesn't matter the subject, logic or rhetoric or literature, is to sort of cast a vision for them of what they're going to learn in here and why it's important. Get them excited about what they're going to learn. And there's no formula for that, but I think it's really good to get them excited. They know they're going to have to face a lot of work, but if that's all they know, they don't know that they're going to read these books. They're just incredible stories about whatever it is. Then I just think that makes it a lot easier for them. They need to have something driving them, and of course you got to sustain that throughout the year, right? When you're working on things, so.
Yeah, what you're speaking to is the preparation level in terms of communication with students, and that can make all the difference in the way that a year goes. Well,
but I think, but also, like, he's talking specifically motivation, right? Why are you doing that, right? Every child starting algebra has that question: why am I doing this? And to have not only a defense ready, but to proactively say, look, this is why you're doing this.
Why are we doing Latin?
Mm-hmm. And in literature or something, I mean, in some of my older classes, high school classes, there were times when it almost felt like we were co-conspirators in figuring this story out, and there would be something in there and some student would make some observation. And I said, did everyone hear what he just said? I've never heard that. In all of the writings I've read on this particular piece, I've never heard anyone say, surely someone else has come up with that, but that is a great insight right there. That they are pioneers in a way in interpreting these things, just like, some of these people who are experts at literature. They like that. They like feeling. Like
this is very different, though, in the primary and the early grammar school, because your first day there is especially kindergarten. Mm-hmm. You're going to spend all day just figuring out your transitions.
Right. Where to put your backpack.
Where to put
how
your
to walk into the room.
Yes. How to sit.
Habits.
Yes. Yeah. Sitting up straight.
How long does it take a kindergarten through second grade class? I mean, obviously kindergarten the longest, but those young years, how many weeks would you say it's going to take before the students really know each of the procedures?
Kindergarten, they continue to work on it all year long. And Michelle used to say she spent half the year training her parents how to be parents of school children.
Sure.
She wasn't just training the students. First and second grade should be less time, but definitely the first week would be where it is set. Yeah. And then after that, it would just be reinforcement and making consistency to make sure. So you're not really going to get a lot of content taught the first week of school in the primary school. And even third grade is going to be establishing different routines, because that's a huge step up.
Right.
To third. And then after that, if they're students that have been here for years, they're going to know the rules and they will have been dealing with the code of conduct for several years. And so it gets easier and easier. They'll know how important penmanship is and that they have to write in cursive. I'm not saying they won't attempt to test the teacher and see, well, I had to write in cursive last year, but am I going to have to this year? Let's try it.
Right.
So you really have to still be on your toes.
Yeah. Well, I think that we've covered a lot of the main things I was thinking about coming into this topic. Do we leave anything else on the table?
Just that it should be fun the first year. And this is me. This is me saying that
school is fun.
Well, it should be. They should go out feeling like they've got a lot to do, but also feeling excited about what the year is bringing. And part of that is because we've given them a passion for what they're going to be studying. And I do think when you're a teacher that is teaching every subject, that it is nice to impart some kind of vision for what the year's going to look like, in addition to the vision for all of the rules they have to follow.
Yeah. Well, that's great advice. I've enjoyed this conversation. See you next time. Thank you for listening to this episode of Classical Etc. If you enjoyed this conversation, please consider liking this video. If you want to join the conversation, then you can comment below. And if you want to stay connected, please subscribe to our channel. I hope you enjoyed this show, and we'll see you next time.